Hey everyone, my name is Rooster. Welcome back to Mecha. Today we're going to have the pleasure of watching Matthysse versus Reven, which happened last weekend in the EU tournament. I thought it would be good to feature maybe some other great players on here aside from my own gameplay and the community plays that we sometimes do. So here we are. Now Matthysse is going to be our protagonist, at least from the way that we are watching, and he's a cost control specialist starting out with sledgehammers and void eyes. He adds 2 crawlers on round 1. Very standard stuff here, symmetrical placement. And then, depending on where Reven might be, he will adjust. Reven here has a Hound Mustang opener, which has become more popular, I feel, even though I don't think it's a particularly amazing starter. It does give you a lot of hit points, and I mean, Hounds are very good currently, but usually when you pair the two of them together, you kind of end up lacking great chaff clear and great DPS in the first couple rounds, which can hurt. Now, this is not something that you can't work around, and especially again with those 5,500 hit points, you might be fine to lose the first couple of rounds. And stacking definitely helps. So this is something that you should be doing in your games. If you happen to start with this pack, try and put your Mustangs together because they can at least kind of pressure the opponent and maybe even get some early round wins when really that's when they're at their weakest. Round 1 here, right side push, trying to avoid that magnetic barricade. That is kind of the norm now. It's pretty hard to push into. Getting all of your stuff slowed down tends to not be too beneficial when you're trying to push in. And speaking of, the crawlers of Matthysse on the left have managed to grab a tower debuff before Reven's army does, so it does look like round 1 here will be going over to Matthysse. Reven, by the way, is an aerial specialist, so we will likely be seeing some aerial units, and if you've seen the title, you'll probably kind of know what is to come. Round number 2, here we are, and we do get unit reinforcements. Reven immediately picking the Fire Badger there, and for Matthysse, I mean, Marksman does seem pretty appealing. He is lacking some anti-air still. 2 deployments is always nice to have. It, make sure that your board is fleshed out very rapidly, as you still have 3 of your own deployments that you could use on round 2. Stormcaller, I wouldn't really pick here into Crawler Mustang. Both units are fast. Could be difficult to make good use of it. Phantom Ray, not the best into Mustang. And Fire Badger, while it is fine, it doesn't have a great matchup into Hound. And, I mean, Matthysse already has a lot of mid-sized units like Sledgehammers and Void Eyes, so it doesn't make too much sense to go into more of that. And in fact, we are going to be seeing Matthysse taking a Fire Badger, selling it so he can immediately get into Vulcan. Very valid line as well. Vulcan is amazing into these type of starts. I guess another reason why they might be somewhat weak is that Hounds, Crawlers, and Mustang all do not like facing a Vulcan. And if you're up against Giant Spec or Cost Control or Quick Supply, these type of specialists that have access to the money to build an early Vulcan, you can get into some trouble. Now, round number 3, though, we do have an interesting card show up. Extended Range Phantom Ray. I like this card a lot myself, even though I don't end up picking it that often. But Reven decides to commit to it. He says, well, I'm an aerial spec. My opponent went for Vulcans. It might be good to try and make use of my specialist and also avoid those Vulcans altogether if I can. So 3 Phantom Rays get picked up here. Last round, he went for Chamber Compression first on the Hounds. It is cheaper than range, so maybe there was an idea here where he didn't have the money to go for range, and so he wanted to pick up a tech anyway and went for Chamber Compression. Generally speaking, I would recommend to go for range first, and then you can try and pick Chamber Compression second if you want, but I wouldn't generally go for Chamber Compression first, because now you'll have to find 500 resources to keep your Hounds at bay from those Vulcans, and more Vulcans are being purchased. The second one now on the flank to deal with that Fire Badger flank from the unit drop. And in the meantime, we're even trying to attack the left side, which was relatively open, but without a beacon here. Okay, one of the Phantom Rays thankfully has the range with the card and has the brains to turn and get a debuff, but that almost went very, very wrong. And while he does get that debuff, the round is relatively close. A Marksman was purchased, even though it is a lone one, and it does not quite have the damage because of Cost Control to take down the Extended Range Phantom Rays, which have reduced hit points. It looks like Reven will be able to pick up a round. if only by a margin of 5 Phantom Rays. But the good thing here is that he is picking up the experience to get the levels, and that is something that you really want when you're trying to carry with 200 cost units. You want them to get the experience to try and make up for the fact that they do not quite have the inherent power of something like a level 1 Vulcan. Round number 4, and we get the super supply. Both players insta-pick it. Nothing here is really worth considering except maybe absorption module on a Vulcan. Very solid, but hey, super supply enhancement on round 4 is hard to pass. And I fully understand both players going for it. Left side now is being reinforced with a Hound to try and shaft clear a little bit. The Phantom Rays are being given the levels as they should. And Reven decides to go for range first. I don't mind this. I think it's fine. It's you know, usually the best option that you have. You could try and consider Energy Shield, but it doesn't really gel that well with extended range Phantom Ray, so oftentimes you will just kind of be stuck with having to click range. As for Matthysse Might, his game plan is relatively solid or relatively simple. Just buy more Vulcans, right? Another Vulcan in front of the left tower to deal with that left side push, and buy some marksmen. You don't have to buy a ton because the Vulcans will be able to spawn the marksmen eventually. You just need a couple to get through the early rounds, and then so that you can click techs on them like range and AA or even double shot if you're getting worried about the tankiness of the Phantoms. And this round is going a lot better already. A little bit of a flank coming in for Matthysse Might, pulling away the units from Reven, which means the tower pressure is not really there. Left side tower does end up falling again. That level 2 Phantom Ray, a lot more powerful, takes down the Vulcan just fine. And it does look like, again, it'll be a round victory for Reven, mostly because the marksmen are very vulnerable right now. They don't have any techs, they don't have any range, so they sit up and about where the Vulcans are, and that means that they do tend to get sniped. So range going to be important here. You could click AA as well if you want to, but sometimes AA will still end up with the marksman not using it and then running in front of some other units. But it is going to be the tech that gets clicked first here. And at this point, I would really consider clicking range on my hounds if I were Reven. I do think it is very important to get that done. And well, the fact that we clicked chamber compression makes all of this a lot more difficult, right? We have 300 left in the bank. That could have been range without chamber compression, and that would have been better than chamber compression without range. Smoke bomb here gets picked up. And Reven decides to go for, I believe, the intensive training there to start building a very heavy flank with a crawler, a hound, and a phantom ray. I don't mind this too much. I wouldn't want to see a ton more investment. 3 deployments tends to, start to get a little bit tricky, but in this type of game where you're up against Vulcan marksmen and you're playing 200 cost units, tempo is going to be your best friend. You do not want this game to go super long because eventually you will get outskilled by giants. That is just how the game works. And going for these type of heavy flanks can give you big round wins. Start dealing the player damage and make sure that you don't send this to round, 10, 11, 12 or even higher. Marksmen here though are doing a very good job. The right side got caught by the smoke bomb, and that means that the chaff clear likely wasn't good enough, especially with the lack of range. So the Phantom Rays get stuck on the wrong targets, and despite a good flank and a debuff for Reven, he is going to end up losing this round. And this is where you start getting a little bit antsy when you're up against this type of Vulcan comp, because the Vulcans came out super early. A lot of them are on the board, and they're starting to win already, whilst we're, not even through the mid game. And at that point, 2 techs on Vulcans, level 2, improved firepower control system, it's getting out of hand. Round number 6, we get the EMP spell picked up for Matthysse Might, or I think he picked it up earlier, never mind, it was on round 3 that he picked it up when Reven picked those extended range Phantom Rays. This round, it was the improved firepower control system and the anti-interference module for Reven. A nice pickup, that way you don't get bothered by any tower takes, and you also don't get bothered by that EMP, which is rather useful. This round, I think 2 Fire Badgers got picked up at level 2, elite recruited for Reven, with the counter-fire tech. Now, I do like the counter-fire tech, and I don't mind the Badgers, But I think here we should have just seen investment into the hounds. The problem is that the hounds have been struggling because they haven't managed to get the levels required. And that means that killing, the crawlers might become a little bit of an issue. Against cost control, luckily, as long as you have the first attack enhancement, you're going to be able to just one-shot the crawlers even if your opponent went for the first defense enhancement. But it seems like Reven didn't really trust it and decides to go for the fire badgers instead. And to be honest, they did very well there, right? The counter fire gets triggered immediately. The Vulcans don't have scorching fire yet, so their tankiness can honestly sustain the damage for quite a while, which means that their attack range is being boosted for quite a while. And, well, it results in a very nice round victory. The only thing now is you're invested somewhat into Hound and somewhat into Fire Badger. Ideally, you would be fully invested into either one of those because their counters are somewhat similar and the Vulcans will be able to deal with both as soon as Scorching Fire comes out. So you really want to try and make one of them kind of, able to survive as long as possible and chaff clear as fast as possible. Round number 7, and we see the second round of unit reinforcements. Sledgehammers here get picked up immediately for Reven. I think Sledgehammers would be a decent pickup here as well for Matthysse Might. Generally speaking, when you're in these, mid-game rounds, Sledgehammers will almost always be useful if you're happy about everything else. If you're happy about your DPS, you're happy about your chaff clear, Sledgehammers are going to be great as an additional form of just buying time. They're great tanks. Aside from your chaff, which buys time, the Sledgehammers can do the same. They don't get picked up here, which I was kind of surprised about. We get a Phoenix pickup instead for Matthysse Might, and I think it even got sold in this case. So, I mean, that is also valid, trying to just buy more Vulcans, elite recruit them even with the triple tech. I mean, the nice thing about Vulcan is that it can just become a one-unit army pretty much. It's able to chaff clear for itself. With Scorching Fire and levels, it can kill almost any mid-sized units on the ground. It can spawn its own marksman to deal with air. There really isn't much that this unit can't do, aside from the fact that you do need a bunch of money to be able to get to that point. And yeah, that's exactly what Matthysse Might does. Just buy more Vulcans, triple tech them, go Subterranean Blitz, which will have some breakpoints now against the low-level Hounds. And, well, you can see the right side is doing well. The left side, though, getting overwhelmed now. And I think this is the correct play for sure for Reven, buying more Phantom Rays, because this really is a unit that likes to deathball, put all of them together, and keep buying more and more and more, especially on one side of the board. I think that is a concept that's very important when you're playing aggro. Try to find towards the mid-game, so around 6 or 7 or 8, which side of the board is weakest for your opponent, and then you can start committing over there, right? 1 round, 2 round, 3 rounds in a row. Just use all of your deployments to make that your strong side and try to break through. That tends to be the best if you're not exactly convinced that you can beat your opponent everywhere on the board. And this is exactly that type of game, right? It's very close. The Vulcans on the right side are super scary, so maybe trying to push on this left side isn't such a bad idea. And it is working out right now for Reven. Now, round number 8, let's see the cards. We get additional deployment slot, which gets picked up by both players. It is a little bit late, but they do have the added money from Super Supply, so I don't mind it. Both players are very healthy as well. Reven sitting at 4k, so perfectly valid to pick this. And, I mean, the alternatives would have been something like heavy armor here, so I think it's a perfectly acceptable choice for both. Sledgehammer's on the flank here, by the way, from Reven. I'm not the biggest fan of. I think he did end up selling at least one of them, and he sells the other now, so I guess it's completely fine. But putting a Sledgehammer on the flank there in front of that Vulcan was never going to achieve anything, so I think just in theory already, it should have been on the main board somewhere if we decided to pick those up. I actually did not have a look. Yeah, I guess the other options weren't great. You would have maybe wanted some type of ground-based tank, like a Rhino with armor, or something of the sort. A Saber-tooth could have been nice, but it wasn't offered, so taking and selling there, definitely the correct move. An oil play comes out, more Phantom Rays are being purchased. Finally, the Hounds have been arranged, which is a very good thing, should help with the chaff clearage. And I think at this point, Reven should be looking to get the first and second, or the second attack and defense enhancements on the tower. When you're playing this type of board with small units, with hounds, with phantom rays, phoenixes, whatever it may be, it just becomes like very, very valuable to invest that 300 in the bonus attack and the bonus defense for your entire team. Left side once more gets completely crushed here. The phantoms out of control, and the marksmen just not numerous enough here to get through everything. And yeah, you could consider going for something like the shield even, but Matthysse might has-click double shots to kind of preempt that. So I understand that Reven doesn't want to click it here. It is rather expensive, and yeah, the opponent already has the counter to it, so you might as well just invest in something different on the board. Armor enhancement is available on the hounds, but I think that at this point it might not be worth clicking it, although the left side only has level 1 Vulcans, so perhaps you would be able to punch through. Level 2 hounds would have 120 armor. These Vulcans with Scorch only deal 129, so it could be worthwhile investing in that. The only problem is there's no deployments, at least yet, on that left side. Now, speaking of sabers, and I guess fortresses, big ground-based tanks with DPS, they do get offered on round 9, and Reven does not take long to pick them up and double-tech them with range and double shot. He decides to put them, or to place them symmetrically on the left side and the right side of the board. I think here, again, you probably want to just stack. Try and punish that weak left side of Matthysse might, because the right side will need a lot more investment than just the Saber-tooth, I think, to punch through. It's just not going to be doable with a level 3 Vulcan, triple tech, itemized, backed up by all of these marksmen, you know, the added fortresses, the crawlers, whatever it may be. You're gonna need a lot more than just this unit to be able to suddenly start turning this fight around. Whereas on the left, you know, you've been winning consistently, so try and use that, like your one anchor point in this game, and use it, or try and use it to get some victories. We get more fortresses for Matthysse might, who is now truly starting to amass a whole bunch of giants, and Forte A gets clicked. Now, Forte A is usually not good into Phantom Ray, but these are extended range Phantom Rays, so they are a lot more squishy, and I don't mind it that much. The fortresses are also very, very nice, just as a ground-based tank, and they buy a whole lot of time. Getting through the level 2, the level 3 Vulcans was already very tough for these Phantom Rays to do, and if you add fortresses on top of that, it starts to get really tricky, and you can see that. Reven now really starts to struggle. This one Saber-tooth could kill the giants, but its brother has died on the right side, and this is currently now stuck, as it hasn't managed to punch through and get a debuff, so it will result in a round loss for Reven. Also note that the Mustangs have been added for Matthysse might. This is a very useful thing to go for when you're up against Phantom Rays, especially if your opponent has not clinked burst mode yet. You can intercept, and it drastically decreases the amount of DPS that the Phantom player is going to have on board. Now, round number 10, and some pretty tame cards overall. I mean, Portable Shield here felt like a really good pickup for Matthysse might. I think he decided to skip. I don't really know why. I think Portable Shield is just worth it in general here on one of the level 2 Vulcans. And the left side Vulcans have leveled now too, so you might even try and start winning your weak side, which up to now wasn't possible. The Rhino drop is available again from Reven, but he just uses it defensively. Or well, I guess he picked it up this round, and well, he was somewhat vulnerable to it, so I get that he wants to try and protect that. And then we go for burst mode on the Phantom Rays to try and overwhelm that interception, and also to try and have the DPS required to get through, I mean, what is now over 10. I think it's 11 giants in total from Matthysse might, and that is not counting the levels, which also add to the tankiness. Yeah, I mean, now things are getting a bit rough. This is the stage of the game where Matthysse might definitely begins to turn things around matchup-wise, and just the inherent value of scaling giants becomes a real threat. Some shields here being put down. Reven perhaps could have tried to beacon some units backwards and around that smoke, which did land partially last round. Now you can see that the hounds are getting inside of that smoke, and they don't really manage to kill all of the chaff, which means that it becomes very difficult for this Saber-tooth to do its job, and it's simply going to end up perishing to the Vulcans and the marksmen. Left side does a little bit better, but also chaff clear runs out. You can even see some crawlers here still burrowed. And yeah, the Saber-tooth, it has the damage to take down the lower level giants, but if it can't connect, it won't be able to do that. And this might just be game instantly. And yeah, it will be quite easily, as you know, it's kind of a tradition, I guess, whenever you're facing a giant board. If you suddenly lose a round very heavily, it might mean the end of the game. Still, I think it was a pretty cool game. Some interesting cards being picked. Extended range Phantom Ray is always fun. And Matthysse might showing a very solid defense here, using that cost control specialist money in the early game to get early Vulcans going. And this is generally something that you should be trying out yourself if you like to pick that specialist in particular. It does work very well with giants. You can sneak them out early, get the scaling going a bit earlier than you usually might with other specialists. And, well, if you get to this stage, you know, you're golden. Now, what should Reven have done? I think round 10 is a little bit difficult, but round 9, we could give a try. The one idea I had was that I think you should be stacking this side of the board. I don't think you should be playing symmetrical anymore, because the left side is just, it's too far gone, right? This Vulcan is level 3, it's itemized, like I said, like, you're just not winning that without getting 4 or 5 deployments in one go, and that's just not happening, right? You could do it here if you want to, but it's too big a gamble. Why give up on your right side when you know that you're winning, just to have a tiny chance to equalize whatever's going on the left side of the board? So let's try and do this. I like the text clicked. I think range and overload makes a lot of sense. It's round 9, so we should loan. We should go temp speed and temp range. We should probably pick up the levels on the Phantom Rays as well here. And what else do we want? Honestly, I think I just might go for some chaff, because the chaff is not that well developed. We are aerial spec, and we can just go for some late wasps. I know that my opponent has Mustang, but they're relatively far forward, and they don't have range right now. So if you just put the wasps far back enough, they should arrive at a timing where the Mustangs hopefully are going to be dead, and you can, you know, benefit from the wasp versus marksman matchup. So let's do something like that. And then I could pick up the level here. I could also try and missile this crawler. I guess both of those are fine. Oh, I think maybe we sell this thing on the flank and then get the second attack enhancement going. I could grab a level as well. Let's maybe just do that. Where do I want it? Maybe over here. And then hope that that's enough. I'm going to try and missile this. I have no idea if there were shields or not on this round, but this might work out a little bit better. There is the EMP, of course. I probably should have used my mobile beacon. But hopefully, I mean, already this Saber-tooth here managed to lock on to that fortress, takes it out. But this guy over here somehow got EMP'd. Okay, that is not a great result. That might end up costing us a little bit here. Although we do manage to break through somewhat. And my Saber is still alive. It's kicking. But it lost a little bit too many hit points for my liking, although it's managing to find the timing here, using that smoke against the opponent, and it would indeed have been a round victory. I don't think it's lethal, though. We deal 1,000 damage. I think that Matthysse might have like 1,600 hit points remaining. We can go back to have a look. Yeah, he did, so it wouldn't have been lethal. But, you know, round 10 would have been difficult regardless, just because of the scaling of this board that you're up against. But it would have given you a chance, right? So I think the main takeaway from this game is later on in these type of aggro games, try to identify where the weak side is or where your strong side is. And don't be afraid to just push over there, right? Your other side can stall. It can take out as many units as needed or as they can, just to buy you some time for your strong side to wrap around. And this is especially true if you're not sure whether you're winning, right? If it's a back and forth game. If you're stomping, it doesn't matter, right? You can do what you want. But in these type of games, I think picking one side and playing for that as you're out is often the correct play. Anyway, if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about it, or if you perhaps caught this game live when it happened on Saturday. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. If you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.